Hey there, Marie Greene from Olive Knits here, and for today's Knitting Rescue 911, we are going to talk about swatching, specifically what to do when your gauge is too small. Now, before we begin, we need to talk about a couple of things related to knitting swatches. First things first, look in your pattern and see how many stitches you're supposed to be measuring over. So for example, the pattern might say 20 stitches in 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and that's the gauge you're going for. In that case, don't cast on 20 stitches. You need to cast on about 10 extra stitches so that you can measure just the interior of your swatch away from the sides. You don't want to only cast on the number of stitches you need to measure because the side stitches get wonky and the cast on edge and the bind off edge get wonky. And that makes it hard to get accurate measurements. The whole point of a swatch is to get good information so you can make sure the thing you're knitting is going to end up the size it's supposed to be. So we've got our swatch. Once you knit it, make sure you block it. Don't block it within an inch of its life. You know, I know sometimes we do wishful blocking where we're just pulling and tugging and we're trying to make it work. Just pull it out so it's nice and even and taut. Pin it flat and let it dry. Once it's dry, it's time to measure. Now, if you measure your gauge swatch and the number you have in 4 inches or 10 centimeters is larger than the number the pattern says you should have, a larger number means your gauge is smaller because you are fitting more stitches into the same amount of space. It's sometimes a little hard to remember because it's kind of opposite of what makes sense in our brains. So here's the easy way to remember it. If your gauge number is higher than the gauge number in the pattern, so for example, the pattern says 20 stitches in 4 inches and you have 24, your number is higher. So to make an adjustment, you need to use a larger needle. Larger number, go to a larger needle, knit your swatch again. This swatch was knit on a size 5 needle, and this is worsted weight yarn. And you can see, especially if we look at the inch measurements here, my 4-inch mark comes all the way over here. If I start here at this first stitch and I measure across the stockinette, I have a whole section here that's outside of that 4-inch mark, that's outside of the stockinette. That's not what we want. So I would go up a needle or 2 in size, and then I would knit it again. This is the same swatch, knit on a size 7 needle, same number of stitches, and look at this. Now I can measure over 4 inches and get whole complete stitches on the interior of the swatch away from the sides. So now I have 20 stitches in 4 inches instead of what I had here, which was significantly more stitches in the amount of space that I need. So rule of thumb is if your gauge is too small, the way to know is because your number is larger. And if your number is larger than the gauge is supposed to be, go up a needle size and swatch again in order to get closer to the correct gauge. If you love learning new knitting tips and tricks, make sure to like and follow me here on YouTube so you'll be the first to know when new videos are available.